A short time ago, the pound was down against the dollar by a fraction of a cent, and sterling was up against the euro by a similarly small fraction.
Now, it may have been top of the agenda during their meeting at the White House, but one of the world's leading financiers has told Channel 4 News that the economic rescue plans being put forward by Gordon Brown and Barack Obama are ludicrous and insane. Jim Rogers says the politicians could be leading us into another Great Depression. Our economics correspondent Faisal Islam went to Singapore to meet him.
It's a president and a PM's shared medicine for the world economic slump. Shore up the banks and then pump prime your economy with billions more in government borrowing. They appear to be getting a global consensus for this at the G20 summit. But what if it's totally wrong?
The idea that you can solve a problem of too much debt and too much consumption and too much borrowing by more borrowing and more consumption and more debt, to my mind, is ludicrous. Insane. People in London and people in Washington don't seem to understand the problem, and the solutions they're coming up with are not going to work.
This is Jim Rogers, a legendary Wall Street investor whose recent comments on the pound and that Britain had nothing left to sell attracted an angry response from Gordon Brown. Mr. Rogers is convinced that world leaders are turning a crisis into a disaster.
Unfortunately, everybody's making the same mistakes we made in the 30s. They're making the mistakes that the Japanese made in the 1990s, and this is going to be worse. The 30s started out as a typical stock market bubble popping, then a recession. But then the politicians got together and made mistake after mistake after mistake, and it led to the Great Depression. I'm afraid it's happening again.
He's moved his family from New York to Singapore because he believes the credit crisis will leave Asia as the centre of the world. He's even enrolled his 5-year-old daughter, Happy, into a Mandarin-speaking school.
The 5-year-old speaks perfect Mandarin now, but I want both of them to grow up continuing to speak Mandarin because it's going to be the most important language in their lifetime. China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, all the money is here now, and that historically has meant this is where the action moves.
That's why after the financial boom he no longer describes Britain and the US as rich countries, and it's why he's raised the spectre of the UK effectively going bankrupt, being unable to sell government bonds.
Britain will surely always be able to sell its bonds.
Well, you write it down, okay? I would suspect you're going to find out that there will be a time in the foreseeable future. Nobody will lend money to Iceland right now. Nobody will lend money to other countries right now. I'm not saying that Britain is like Iceland at the moment. But if things do continue to deteriorate downward, there will come a time when people say, I'm not going to lend money to the UK anymore.
With the spires of the City of London no longer towering so high, this market oracle sees a bright future for Britain and other countries in some forgotten fields.
Maybe you don't like being in television. May I suggest that you go and get a farming degree, because farmers are going to be driving Lamborghinis in the next 10, 20, 30 years. The people in the City of London, all those stockbrokers, they're going to be driving taxis. The smart ones will learn how to drive tractors so that they can go to work for the smart farmers.
His views are always maverick, but if he's anything like as right as he's been in the past, the President and Prime Minister's Global New Deal is fatally undermined, and we should all learn Mandarin.